Noon. It's a bit later our time today. We normally would start at 12, but today we start at 6 p.m. because we have a special guest in another location.
Yeah. And it's Monday.
It is Monday. Wow, I forgot that.
Just announcing it.
I forgot it myself. Thank you for letting me know. It is going to be a great show today. We have Delissa Hawking that's currently in Las Vegas. She's a fifth generation psychic, a beautiful woman who I had the opportunity to meet firsthand when I was doing the book tour about a year or so ago. And we are going to spend a great hour with her on what is it, Bambos?
A wonderful chaos.
Hello. Welcome to A Wonderful Chaos. I'm Andy Chaloff.
And I'm Charles Bambos Dimitriou.
And we are going to be spending an hour together with
Delissa
Hawking.
Yeah.
And just to give some prep to Delissa, when I was doing the book tour a year and a half ago for The Last Letter, I sent out the feelers, right? It was the first week. And there's one thing I love doing is taking spontaneous action. Ronnie would call it chumming. I throw blood in the water and I see what fishes show up. And this was one of those moments when I was randomly posting that I would be looking for people that would be open to hosting an event that would welcome people to sit and write a letter to a loved one, of course, with the intention that they might not be there. And very early on, Delissa was maybe the second or third person who said yes to it. And I don't even remember. I don't know if she remembered because I asked her when I went that she knew how we came together. I think she just saw it. She felt like this feels good. And she wrote me and said, hey, let's do this.
Nice.
So she was, unfortunately, I only got to spend a few hours together because I drove into Vegas and drove out because Vegas isn't necessarily my favorite town in the world. But we did get to see each other. And there was something beautiful and magical that I so appreciated that when we decided to do the show, it was clear to me that I wanted to have her be someone we would spend some time with.
Yeah, and she's a psychic, and I know two psychics now.
Is that right? Yeah. And the beauty was this, is that just from my nature, I live in this skeptical nature, right?
Yeah.
My mentor was horrifically skeptical. I mean, he would beat me, like emotionally beat me if I did not take whatever I was coming from a understanding of what it was. It has to be explainable. Like you have to be able to explain. If you can't explain it, don't talk about it. And what I started to see, especially after his passing, was that in trusting my intuition, I was becoming far more aware. There's things that I understand and I can't necessarily make sense of. And I started to say, well, the more I trust this, the more I see that things make a lot more sense. And the more I see, my clients will often say, Andy, we thought you were crazy because you were anticipating things that were going to happen that there's no way you could know. And I'd say, yeah, but it seemed obvious to me just based on the sensibility.
Yeah.
And that is where I'd love to bring Delissa in, because for me, the inquiry, the thing that gets me very excited is that when you start to hone the intuition, and she'll take it, of course, to another level, then we'll discuss with her a little bit, where does the intuition move into other abilities, the psychic abilities and the median, which I don't even have a distinguisher for at the moment, which I'm sure we'll get into when we have her on.
Let's do it.
But before we do that, I would love to play a short clip from Delissa, which you haven't seen yet. And then we'll jump right in just to sort of give you an intro. This is an intro to Delissa and her work, right? We'll play it immediately. Oh, sorry, I'm on the wrong screen. It all looks so good.
I'm Delissa Hawking. I am Las Vegas's premier psychic medium. It's never a dull moment in my world. I work with a variety of clients, but really they fall into three categories. Locals who live here in Las Vegas, tourists that are visiting from all over the world, and celebrities from every facet of celebrity that you can think of. I receive my psychic messages in a couple of different ways. One, I'll see it through my third eye, which is clairvoyant, which almost looks like a movie that's projecting onto a screen. So I'll just see things around a client. I also hear things, which is clairaudient. empathic, which is the feeling of different energies around me. So I'm getting messages in a variety of ways, and sometimes it's stronger one way for a client than the other. Yes, I feel your energy. I feel your emotion.
I'm like shaking.
Oh,
In a good way, though.
I grew up in a
Yeah, it's in a
family
good way.
where my grandmother Eloise and my great-great-grandmother Belle would see spirits. And so they always talked to me about what they were seeing and what relative came to visit the night before. So I always grew up thinking that it was normal. When I connect with the client, I will often feel my grandmother Eloise along with my great-great-grandmother Belle in the room with me, helping and assisting with the sessions. And I typically wear something that belonged to my grandmother Eloise during each of my sessions. So today I'm wearing my shoes, and I'm looking forward to her helping me bring messages forward for my clients today. So being a psychic medium, you'd think I'd be able to read for myself, but that's the farthest thing from the truth. I actually can't see anything that's going to happen for myself, which makes it interesting. I would love to know, when am I going to meet the one? When am I going to have that house on the ocean? When am I going to hit the lottery? But I can't see any of it for myself. But, at least if I can help other people, it's all worth it. I'm Delisa Hawking. I am the Sin City Psychic.
I think she's got about as nice a jingle as we've got going. I can beat my head to both of these things.
Yeah.
Oh, I think we have to turn off this thing. Otherwise, we'll get another video, which is always a pain when you're, doing these systems. Let me
Just cancel.
I'll skip what. Oh, here we are. So, without further ado, it would be great to invite Delisa on the show.
Let's do it.
Hello. Welcome to Delisa Hawking. Hello.
Hello. Hi.
Hey, Delisa. Like,
I tried to just do like an impromptu ponytail. Now I realize that my hair is all screwed up. So we're just going to roll with it.
I think it looks great.
are you wearing something now from your great grandmother or grandmother?
Oh, you know what? The shirt I got when I was on a trip with her. And the shirt brand is actually called Delicia. And so it's like,
Really?
oh, perfect. I'll wear that today. But yeah, we used to vacation a lot together. So my grandmother and I would go on a lot of cruises.
I'd love that.
Nice.
When my dad died, I basically went into his closet and I took all of his clothes. And like my wife goes crazy because she's like, when are you going to get rid of that stuff? So yeah, I love that and I always say I feel close to him whenever I'm wearing it. And that shut her down really quick.
Yeah, I have a closet full of my grandmother's clothes.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I do.
Oh, that's beautiful. So thank you again for coming. It would be great. You'll see down below, we've already put the link to your page on Facebook, Spirit and Spark. That was the building I went to when I visited you for the session, which I loved, of course. There was also a really beautiful thing that, just to share aside, was that when I went, you were one of the few locations that actually asked people to pay, right? Asked people for
Yes.
some monetary compensation. And when I left, it was this beautiful moment. I was like, no, I actually just, you can keep it. And she was really like, in this beautiful way, like this beautiful relationship with money, said, no, Andy, I really want you to have half of this, just in recognition of what this has meant to both of us. So in a weird way, it's not often when I get to meet people that have kind of what I would call a cleaner relationship with money, in the sense that they actually see it almost as a form of gratitude and appreciation, and without the baggage of you owe or we owe. When I received it from you, I felt really, as how I experience money, is I was receiving love from you and not money. And in that way, I mean, I get emotional just feeling it. But so thank you for giving me that experience in return. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, I don't think I've ever heard anyone acknowledge that about me. So I appreciate that you're that in tune to recognize what that was.
Yeah. I felt it very deeply. And like I said, you were the only person, and not that the other ones weren't. I went in with saying this is all without charge, but the way you gave it was so beautiful that I immediately felt grounded in the receiving of it. And that's very special. I don't have that often, so thank you for that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me on the show today.
Yeah, I've got a lot of questions. I don't know about you, Bambos, but
I also have questions.
Great. I'm ready.
Well, no, none of the trick questions. I had you went in your video, if I may.
Yeah, go for it.
In the video, you said that there were 3 ways in which you're receiving message. Okay, and I say receiving message. Excuse my whatever the phrasing I use. Right. The clairvoyant. I wrote them down. Clairvoyant. Yeah, clairvoyant was the
Audience.
first. Clairaudient, and then empathetic.
Yes.
And I am often curious because I feel since I feel myself to be very empathetic, like that's sort of, and I equate it often with my dad being abusive, actually, because when I was a kid, he was very, very verbally abusive. And in a way, I trained myself to like key into anything that would trigger him. But in a way that was like a deep kind of connecting with something deeper in myself, which I would even start to equate with aspects of clairvoyant. Right. That I would start to say, wow, I also see that part in my brain, but I would almost never call it that for anxiety of the alienation that might come with it. Right.
Yeah.
So it would be like, wow, I can see and I can feel like I can trust it, but I wouldn't feel comfortable enough to use that labeling. Well, I don't like labeling in general because of what I would fear, especially in a business context. Oh, this guy I can't take him seriously. So that was just something that to share. You put empathetic in there third, and I almost thought empathetic feels like almost the prerequisite to the other 2.
Yes.
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah, you're right on. So I'll see imagery and symbols, which the best way I can describe it to people is it looks like a daydream where I'm kind of like staring out and I'll start to see symbols, and then words and phrases will generally come in through the right ear. Being an empath, I describe as like a lot of people I think have it, but they might not recognize what it is. So to me, it's like walking into a room and you can feel what somebody feels that's standing in the room with you. That's being empathetic. That's picking up on their energy. And clairsentience, which I don't specifically mention in the video, is actually feeling information in my physical body. And so, even though I don't publicly market myself as a medical intuitive, what I do often in sessions is I can pull up the body of someone and spirit will show me where in the body the energy is blocked. And I will also at times feel it as physical sensations in the body. I remember there was a client I had very early on, and she sat down in front of me and I pulled up her body and I was like, oh, what the heck? And I started actually feeling something in my ear. And I'm describing this to her and she says, I have a tumor in my ear. I was like, oh, so I can feel sometimes very specific things that are showing up in my body as a way to be a messenger for the person I'm working with.
And that would be, how would you phrase that?
Clairsentient. Clairsentient is feeling it in your body. Medical intuitive would be, something that some people like label themselves at to describe what it is that they're doing. But I always warn people, I'm not a doctor. I don't prescribe, I don't diagnose, but I can certainly see where things are showing up.
Yeah. I realized there was a woman who was doing a course in Northern California, and she did something that was quite similar to where she was doing the coursework where all the participants would sort of be observant of the other body and feel into where they saw the hold, right, where the person was holding. And what freaked me out was that as I was allowing that sensibility to arise in me, I was seeing it and not knowing, like, how can I see this thing that was always there that is now apparently obvious?
Yeah. But when you tune in and you're like, okay, fine, I'll work with it. It's amazing what shows up, because I think anybody can do what I do. I think because I'm 5th generation, I grew up in a family that fostered it and believed it, and we talked openly about it. I think it's why I'm where I'm at right now. But I believe that with the right tools and training and openness, I think anybody can access the information.
Yeah.
Like, how was it being you then when you were small? Like, were you a normal kid? Like, were you in school like, oh my God, I can see this?
I was normal. So, because I get asked that question a lot, which is a great question. I really feel like I had the privilege of just being a normal kid. But I would sit with my grandmother in her living room, and she would tell me the spirits that would walk through her living room. And she would tell me like all these synchronistic events that would happen. And synchronicity in my world is like things are not an accident, and kind of weaving through the story of what happens, one thing that leads you to the next thing. So she would tell me like all these stories, and I would sit there as a kid like half like paranoid and half really intrigued. And now she's so much a part of my story. But it wasn't until later in life that this came about, where I stepped into it fully and decided I would do it professionally. It's not what I thought I would be doing for a living at all.
When did that happen? When did you make the switch from whatever normalcy was before to that?
I believe it was the summer of 2015.
Wow.
And so it's not that long ago, right? I described myself as a serial in the hospitality industry in Las Vegas for a long time, but I'd always kind of in the background started companies. And I loved the idea of business and growing business. And in 2013, I decided to leave, I call it retire from hospitality.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm going to quit my job. And I felt like my life was on the verge of changing drastically, but I didn't know how and what was going to happen. And so I just, with blind faith, I took my mom to dinner one night, and I told her at dinner that I was going to quit my job. And I had an amazing job, like a dream job. And I'm just like, it's not it anymore. And she's like, well, what are you going to do? I don't know, Mom. I don't know, but I'm just going to throw caution to the wind. So I quit my job. I gave my job a month notice. And then I went and traveled through Europe and I'm like, I don't know. And I ended up taking a job through a series of synchronistic events at a private university in Texas. And I worked at the business school, and I was planning events for them across the country. And it was through that, and I can kind of give you the Cliff Notes version, and whatever you want to dive into, I can certainly do that. But while I was living there was going to be happening for 3 days in New York. And I love learning and development and all that. And so I went to the Omega Institute up in the middle of nowhere in New York and studied with these amazing thought leaders in the belief that nothing is an accident. Well, how ironic my life is that through that trip, all of these things happened. And the last night of my trip, I was staying with a friend of mine who just so happened to have a house in the middle of the forest next to the retreat center. And he gets a phone call while I'm there, and he gets the news that his beloved aunt had fallen down a flight of stairs and died unexpectedly. Mm-hmm. And while I was sleeping that night, she had come through to me and said, I need you to deliver a message to my nephew. I need him to know that I'm okay. And then I made it to the other side. And so I wake up the next morning and I'm like, what the, okay. Because, I immediately flash back to my grandmother and like all the stories that she would tell me. And now here I am as the messenger. And so I go out into his kitchen. I'm like, hey, Peter, so your aunt came through last night. And he looked at me like very straight faced. And he goes, really? Well, then what did she look like? And I realized now I was being tested. But I described her facial features, her hair. I knew exactly what she looked like. And he looked at me and he goes, yeah, that's her. I said, okay. She's okay. She made it to the other side. And I flew back to Texas. And my brain would not shut off at that point, because it's before, but this was the first time somebody I'd never met, didn't know, had come through to deliver a message. So then I started testing it and everything unfolded from there. But I trusted the process. I didn't go into fear of is this for me or who's going to judge me? I just said, fine, I'm going to go with it.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I mean, that's the beauty of the story, is even like trusting that this will guide you, the process will guide you. I mean, that I find to be just beautiful. And what I think is also kind of quite like beautiful and remarkable is that in trusting the process, you let unfold whatever it was going to be that you discover in that process, which I assume has been quite a bit in that journey.
5 years, professionally and personally, has been probably the biggest growth spurt I've ever been through in my entire life. And I think as I even try to project into the future, I don't know if I'll go through another 5-year period like this, because my entire life changed. Everything about me changed.
Yeah. I'm curious, like, what are for you the harder clients? Like, what are the harder situations that you're confronted with in this work?
I think people tell me more than they tell their therapists. And I
so.
think it's because, well, they know that they feel or they sense that they can trust me with their deepest, darkest secrets. And they also feel like I'm not judging them. And so I really hear a lot of very deeply emotionally driven things from people, which I feel honored to hold that for individuals. I think people that are not ready to take accountability for themselves or their actions are probably the hardest clients, because you can sit there and you can tell them everything that's coming through and all the messages that they're supposed to hear. And if they're not ready or at a place in their life to accept it, the feeling or the sensation can really fall flat. And so I find that the best people to work with are the ones that step in and say, you know what, I'm going to trust that whatever the universe feels like I need to hear today, I'm going to show up and I'm going to hear it. Yeah. And that seems to be the best method for sessions.
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, why would your session be any different than one of my sessions, actually? I mean, nothing's worse than having someone in denial, like not allowing any of the information standing of themselves.
So how do you deal with that?
Yeah.
How do I deal with it?
Yeah.
With as much grace as I possibly can. Because I also understand on the flip side, the universe would not have sent them to me if there wasn't something that they were supposed to hear. And so I really try to release any expectations of how it's going to be received or what they're going to do with it moving forward. I have people that come and talk to me once a month and do a session. And I have some people that come, every few years. But whatever it is meant to be revealed, I trust in that timing. I've had clients, there was a period before the coronavirus where I had a really long waiting list, and people were booking months out in advance. And it would come time for their session and I would hear over and over and over again, I'm so glad my session is today, because in these last few months, there have been things that have happened in my life that now I'm so excited that I get to dive into those things. And so you always have to trust that whether I can get you in tomorrow or 3 months from now, that it is going to be the exact timing that the universe is lining up for you.
It's interesting because there's something that comes up in me as you speak, and that to some degree underlying your approach in general as I process it is this fundamental understanding of synchronicity, that basically it is all as it was meant to be.
It's perfect.
Yeah.
There are no mistakes. And I look at your life, each individual life is a piece of music, and I kind of think of it like an orchestra, right? So everyone's playing their instruments and all these different people have different roles they're playing in your life, but you have these really high notes, and sometimes you have really low notes. But at the end of your life, you have a beautiful piece of music that is the synchronicity of the universe playing its part in your life.
Yeah, I think surrendering to that synchronicity is sort of the quintessential challenge that people face in wanting an expectation that isn't being met, right? Because that's where we get stuck.
Trusting the process.
Yeah, it's trusting the process, which is what you've done by leaving your own job 5 years ago and going on this journey, is just trusting the process.
Yeah, I think one of the keys is surrender and let go of everything you fear to lose.
Yeah.
Nice.
I think we had someone write something. My eyes are so bad. I'm just going to put it on.
Surrender is the feeling I'm getting. Surrender spirit to the unknown.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Nice.
Yeah,
beautiful.
That's beautifully said. Yes.
Like tuning into you and the kind of path that you chose, or it chose you, or you kind of embraced in the end. It actually feels quite lonely.
Oh, what an interesting observation. It can be extremely isolating. And I remember at first, I was slightly hesitant of even telling people that I was doing this as a job because of what people were going to think. But through the years and through this process, you have to really stand confidently and know your worth. And so I had a lot of work I had to do on self-worth and knowing that it was okay for me to play this role for people and to step into this gift fully. But there are more and more people I think that are understanding spirituality and psychic abilities and energy. So I don't feel as alone as I did in the beginning, but I would say the first couple of years were extremely isolating and lonesome.
Yeah, you have to trust something that in some ways, if you say I'm a medical doctor, then everyone automatically knows what you had to do to get there. So now I have to convince somebody that I'm skilled in reading energy. You know, like
Yeah.
that isn't gonna land with a lot of people for sure.
Right. I do think, though, interestingly, with where we're at right now with the coronavirus and people being in isolation and having to look at their own stuff, I think this is going to create an opportunity for an awakening in more people, because a lot of folks right now are in fear or they're in scarcity mindset and they don't know where their next $5 or euro are going to come from. They're just like, I don't know. And so they're sitting at home, also faced with maybe living with people that they haven't spent this much time with. And now they're realizing, do I even want to be with this person?
Yeah,
Is this the right fit for me? So a huge opportunity for awakening is standing in front of a lot of people right now.
Yeah, without a doubt.
Yeah, hopefully.
Yeah, hopefully everyone
Hopefully.
has the opportunity. We can only synchronicity can give it to you, but that doesn't mean you're going to take it. We had a message.
From Lucas. What about death? Is that a synchronicity?
Yeah.
Ooh, interesting. So I love to think about free will versus destiny. How much of it is pre-plotted and pre-planned before you're born, and how much of it is kind of like this wiggle room to kind of get you to where you want to be, right? So with death specifically, how I've kind of interpreted it in my mind is that each of us has created almost a blueprint of these plot points of your life, of this lifetime, and death included. And from what I've learned and studied, it feels like there are a few different points in your lifetime that you plot as a potential exit point. And so like you will often hear of people saying, that was a close call. I can't believe I made it out of there. Or they're faced with an illness or things of that nature. And I think it's up to the soul of that person to decide, are they going to take that exit point or are they going to continue forward? I've studied near-death experiences for a long time. I had the privilege of studying with Dr. Raymond Moody, who's one of the world's leading experts on near-death experiences, and a lot of similarities emerge from that. And people that go to the other side and they say, you know, I had to go through this life review, or my grandparents were standing there, or a dog I had 30 years ago was there. But there's a lot of similarities. But I think at the end of the day, we're on Earth School to learn and to grow and to evolve. And when we decide, I think it's a decision between us and the universe of when we're going to take that exit, kind of like an off-way ramp of a freeway. Like, oh, you know what? I think I'm just going to go ahead and go. But I do think there are a few options for that in each lifetime.
What kind of questions, like in my brain, I can't figure out, why would I come to you? What kind of questions do actually people bring to the table?
Oh God. I mean, I have heard everything, I think, at this point. But the moment I say that, I'm going to be like getting a client next week that's going to have a bunch of wild questions. I've had everything from, am I going to win the lottery? And they were very straight-faced. I was like, oh, they're serious. I better look at this. So I take every question seriously, because I feel like they're going to come to me and ask me that for a reason. I get a lot of love questions. Am I with the right person? Should I leave this relationship? Am I going to meet somebody? When am I going to meet them? What are they going to be like? Money. So what's interesting is when I look at a money question, so I'll be asked something like, how's my financial future? Am I going to be making enough money? Spirit will show me it. They'll pop a chart out in front of me and it looks like the stock market, like a ticker, right? So I'll see all the ebbs and flows. And so often somebody will ask me that and I'll see a big dip. Let's say they're an entrepreneur or a business owner. I'll see a dip and I'll see a timeline, and they'll then say, oh, well, I was thinking about investing in this new product or this new technology for my company. And that will be seen as like an investment because they're spending money out. So those are popular questions. I do get a lot of business owners because I've owned so many companies that I can see it from a business perspective, but I can also layer that with the psychic information. So that's been really helpful for entrepreneurs to have a conversation about their companies.
Interesting. Yeah.
Like, how's your love life? Like, if you meet someone,
Why am I always asked that question? Okay,
Well,
I think I gotta go.
It's a great question, but I was like, how did you get there?
well, I was just people ask for love, so I'm
Yes.
thinking, do you like women or men? Like, whatever. Do you actually get to see the map?
I was just asked this question a couple of days ago, actually. So I would love if I could just see everything in like very black and white terms in regards to my love life. I date, right? I've never been married. And I think, so I was asked the other day, like, do you date a lot or do you go on a lot of dates often with people, and how do you meet them? And my problem has been, like, I'll open up, let's say, a dating app, and I'll scroll through, and I can literally look at someone's photo and know if there's any hope for anything good, that would go the distance. So I don't go on a lot of dates because I know that it's not going to like really work out. And so the ones that I do select to go on dates with, I actually approach the date very open-minded, but I have already a sense and a feeling that there's something there that either I'm going to be in a long-term relationship with them, or there's something I need to learn or they need to learn from me.
Yeah.
So it's more of a connection rather than like a superficial date, which often scares men.
Yeah, I was
they'll
gonna
start
say.
dating me and then they like realize that, oh,
What does she
she's
know about me?
serious.
Tell me about my ex-girlfriend.
like being
So
on the
funny.
topic, then, like, what kind of men do you actually attract?
Ooh, so that would be like part 1 and part 2. Part 1 would be like the Delisa that didn't work on her self-worth issues.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So part 1 is like any man that smelled like he was emotionally unavailable, I would go for. And it was because I wasn't at a place where I felt like I could really hold space with a man and be in a committed, loving, long-term relationship. So I had a program running that like I just needed like quick little relationships that was actually trying to show me what I was worth, but I wasn't seeing it. And so through the evolution of all this work I'm doing, when I help a client, I'm helping myself, right? So then you really start to look at relationships and what you're doing and what you're not doing. And once I owned that was what I was attracting and really trying to heal it within myself, now I really try to go after relationships that are going to be deep and that can stick around, which really scares me. I'm not afraid to go there, but I'm also new to the part 2. And so with that, I think I have to take things a little bit slower. I have to be aware of what I'm giving and where I'm holding back, because it'll ultimately trigger me. And so it's just being, aware of that and owning it and loving that part of myself, but also recognizing where the healing still needs to go in.
That's beautiful.
I need to put this comment up for you.
There's someone who's written something who
sounds like another business opportunity. I love it. Clients bring their dating apps to sessions.
Okay, so here's like the ironic part. I love this girl. So I used to own a dating company, and I was a matchmaker. And that was the company I owned right before I started Spirit and Spark. And it was interesting, but it was too superficial and I didn't like it. But yeah, I mean, somebody they could show me right now their dating profile and pictures. I have one client, I swear to you, she sends me pictures of all the men she's gone on dates with recently. And during her session every single month, we look at them and we look at the energy and who they are and is it a good fit. But it's so helpful because then she knows like which ones to invest more time in or not. So I love this girl's comment because it is right on target.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing, by the way. That was really beautiful. It touched me. Like it is true that we attract the thing we haven't yet solved in ourselves. Yeah. And I've known that vicious cycle. I think I keep saying Ronnie is the first healthy relationship I've ever had in my life because there was always somebody else I was trying to heal. So I'd find people that were weak or needed me. And then I felt like I could then, support them. and that gave
Were you
me
triggered?
in what?
Like when you started in that relationship, because this is like your first like really healthy, long-term, committed. Like, when you first started in that relationship, did you feel like you were being triggered?
Not really, because I interrupted my life so much. I sold everything I owned. I lived in an attic space. I mean, the fact that she'd go out with me in that state was already like quite remarkable. But I really like just said, I'm going to experience life without all of the, like, I didn't go for just the butterflies. Like, like I'm in love with this person. I just need to have the sex and then let that wear off. And then I am like frustrated because they don't wash their dishes, like it wasn't like it was more like, well, holistically, I just love this person.
Yeah.
And there was sort of like, I would say in the meantime, she's my best friend and my lover. Right. And I think, it took me a long time not to go into this cycle of finding love and then being resentful because they weren't doing the things that I expected, that I wasn't even aware that they were like, I wasn't even aware I had the expectation. And then the resentment would come in, and then I'd blame them for the thing that I wasn't resolved in myself, like the typical cycle that we all know.
Yeah, but in your case, Andy, you've also heightened your awareness so much that the pattern might still be there, but you've rose above it. Like you love that part of the person.
Oh yeah. I mean, there was, in the book, The Last Letter, there's one chapter dedicated to my wife, Ronnie, which, she still hasn't read the book, which I think is just brilliant. And she gets frustrated. Like every time I say, she's like, are you saying this because you want me to read your book? No, I'm happy you don't. Just don't read it. But the funny thing was that I made the chapter specifically because it was such an important moment in my life, was loving someone for everything they weren't, instead of thinking they should be something that they're not. And that moment changed my life forever, because in a way I said, either I love you for everything you're not, or I leave you, because it'll never work out anyways.
Like, this guy fucking inspires me.
Yeah. No, that's why I asked you the question. I was like, I want to learn.
Yeah, well, it's a beautiful question, because it was like, it was one of those moments, I think, in everyone's life when you finally look at the mirror and you say, wow, the only thing common in all the problems in my life is me.
Yeah.
Bam, bam, bam.
I can always blame everybody for everything. And the humor is that there's always an expectation that I have that's not being fulfilled by the other. And now, instead of sitting with the helplessness of that, one goes into obviously blame. And then that cycle, I mean, you can go to 5 different relationships. You'll never solve it, of course, right?
Yeah. Right.
I have another question for you. So you met Andy through The Last Letter.
Yes.
Are you comfortable sharing who The Last Letter was for?
Yeah, I wrote a couple. I wrote one to my mom and one to my dad. And I have them, and I kind of tucked them away and hid them. What I felt, this is going to sound a little bit morbid, but I tucked them away, and I felt like, you know what, I'm going to stick these somewhere that if anything ever happened to me, that someone would be able to find them if they were going through my things. And so even though I haven't handed the letters over to them, they are definitely around, because there will be a day that they will receive those letters, I believe. But yeah.
Wow, that makes me want to cry.
Yeah, it makes me take a deep breath in.
But it makes you think, like, you're not guaranteed tomorrow. And who knows where that exit point was that you designed, right? And so I figured somebody's got to find them.
I mean, for me, remember on some level doing the surrender to me driving across the U.S. for the 3 months and sitting with you and the other 60 groups, my desire was the experience you just shared back to me. But of course, I didn't get much of the feedback because I was gone to the next location before I had any time. So thank you for sharing that with me, because that in a way that was why I took the journey. But I also surrendered to the fact that it might not happen, because then I would be stuck in an idea that everyone has to have an experience like the one you just shared.
Yeah, it was powerful. I remember it. I remember sitting in that room in that circle with my paper and my pen and going, all right, who's it going to be? Who am I going to write the letter to? And what in the world do I really want to say? It opened you up. I think a lot of people, I'm glad that you had all those groups and those people, but I do think that there's a percentage out there that they wouldn't want to even try it because of the emotions and vulnerability that it would bring up. But what an amazing growth opportunity if you take it and you do it.
Yeah, imagine doing that 60 times over a 3-month period. It took me a year to recover after it. It was exhausting. I didn't realize that was too much. Yeah.
I read the book 8 times.
Yeah,
8 times?
The next book, is coming out, right?
I didn't know, but what was so funny is right before we started and got on today, I heard Andy's writing another book and he's going to go do public speaking about it. And so I don't know what you're writing about in the second book or where you're going to be going, but they showed me, like in like movie scenes where there's like an author at a bookstore and they're standing there and they're reading and there's people at the bookstore or library like sitting there. That's the vision that they showed me with it. So I hope you're not anticipating just staying at home with the second book.
I had a vision of where it might go. It's called The Wounded Healer, and it's exactly about the journey. So it's the 3-month journey. I just basically spoke it into a voice recorder, and then I rewrote it and then edited it down. So that you unfortunately weren't in it because we only got to spend about 2 hours together. You're in the first chapter because I said I went and visited a psychic area just because it sounded more flavorful. That added color to the whole experience.
Thanks. Have you thought about doing a documentary around this? Because they just showed me my symbol for a documentary.
Oh, that's so funny because we have a documentary person filming us right now.
Yeah, we have our documentary.
Right there. She's right there.
She's in the corner. We didn't say anything about it, but she's there.
They show it to me very documentary style. So that's perfect. Okay.
Okay, we'll talk to her.
Yeah, we've please go ahead.
Do you meet other psychics or do you train, like, do you attract women or men who want to learn the trade or who want to develop it?
Yes. Give me 1 second on answering that question though, because I have to go back to the information that came in about your documentary. So I do actually feel like it's going to be picked up and developed. So what I mean by that is I feel like a streaming service, like a Netflix or something like that, is going to be interested in developing the documentary series. It doesn't feel like just one episode. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So I'm going to go back.
I spoke to my the publicist in California who said we've got to pitch this down to Netflix to make sure they do the series on it. So it could very well.
Well, you're on the right track.
Reality. Wow.
I love that. Okay. So back to your question. I get people that want to develop it. And so I have online certification classes that they can take. It's all video based. And then I review all their homework and everything. So I do. And I find that there's an increase of people that are interested in being a healer or a psychic. And they want to know, like, how do I get from here to there? How do I activate that kind of career? And so I do think personal development classes, whether it's through me or other reputable companies that are in the spiritual space, I would recommend them. It's a good way of practicing.
I've got an interesting question that rises when you say that, which is like, there's going to be people who are like not channeling clean energy, right? Like I've seen it in my life in all trades, right? It's like, if you haven't worked out your own shit, and now you're trying to go and heal another, like that bleeds into everything. So how do you distinguish when you're like in the session or coaching or like bringing up a trainer when they're like wanting to see things and not coming from a channeling sort of state of being?
It's a great question because I've seen it over and over and over again. There are so many healers or intuitives that haven't dealt with their own stuff. And it does. Like the purer the vessel or conduit you are for information, the cleaner your messages to other people are. But if you have a filter that is something heavy or something negative, that's going to infiltrate into every message that you're giving to clients. So I think it's really important to vet whoever it is that somebody's going to work with. But most people have stuff that they're working through, right?
Yeah.
I think that seeing a person for who they really, really are comes with time. And unfortunately, I don't think that there's like an easy switch to see, is this person coming from a good place? Because I think that, especially if we get into talking about entities or negative energies that are hosting in someone's body, kind of like exorcisms or things like that, that if they're operating from that part of them, then sometimes the entities will actually make them think they're godlike, or make them think that they're authentic, or give them power to read people. But they're actually tapping into the energy of the being that's living inside of them that they're hosting. So it goes layers and layers deep.
And interesting, because I would call that, I would have my own terminology for that.
Projections?
Well, I would call that identity. So in your languaging would be something evil, I guess, I don't know what the words were exactly.
Like a darker, denser energy. Yeah.
And I would say that would, the word often would come up with shadow, right? Or I would almost see where we have an identity in ourselves, which we haven't yet made peace with in a weird way. Yeah.
Yes.
In some ways, I've seen more and more, the more I interact with any sort of being that's sort of more empathetic and more interactive in the world, like they're all kind of like honing in using different language, although they're very similar. And certain people seem to be attracted to certain languaging. And at the basis of it all, there's like certain fundamental practices that are quite similar among all of these practices, which that's what I found as I've taken my own journey. Yeah.
Do you actually have rituals to like keep yourself in tune or aligned?
Oh, yeah. I think everything is a vibration. And so like working out, I have an exercise bike, like that keeps my energy higher. I'm vibrating higher. The foods I eat will play a role. So I don't like to eat a big meal before I go and do a session, or if I have to go get on stage, oils. I use a lot of high frequency oils that I'll place on my body or my chakra points. And so I have those tools in my spiritual tool belt to keep the vibration high, because I feel like the higher your vibration is, the easier you can get downloads and information. So it's going back to being a clearer vessel. And then there's a set of language that I use at the start of every session to set the intention that only that which is highest and best and of the white light is able to come through. Because I do feel that if you don't set your parameters or your boundaries, there are other energies that will try to come in. Not that they're all bad, but some of them may be tricksters, or you may even be in a location where there's a lot of spirits that haven't transitioned that are walking around, and now you're picking up on their energy. So you have to be specific of what it is that you're willing to work with.
I have some interesting transition questions, but I don't.
No, that's good.
So I've seen, by the way. So for those that are watching that don't know, you do have a show on Fremont Street at Binion's at the casino there, right? Or
yes.
It was there, and so
it was there.
I mean, it was there until the world ended. But and the thing that, like, I saw your notes, because you'll post the notes from the actual events. And when I see your notes, like, I'm thinking to myself, you've got a room full of how many people are in a show?
Well, it's a pretty intimate showroom. It holds 75.
Okay, so you got 75 people in that space. And in some way, like, I keep thinking to myself, if I'm going to go into a space where there's 75 people that have paid money to basically have a show, and like, I got to be on, like, I got to be the vessel that's carrying the messages. So there's got to be some degree of stress that, you're performing as much as you're going to be there for these 75 people. How is that?
It's the biggest test of faith.
It must be. Because
you stand backstage and I would have the same kind of intro and how the last 2 minutes of the show were, but 85% of every show is different, right? Because I'm doing readings from people in the audience. They're up on stage with me. I don't know what they're going to ask. It's all picked out of a fishbowl, their number.
Wow.
So it's all different every single time. So backstage, I would stand there and just remind myself, like, go in, have absolute faith. They put you here for a reason. So I wasn't fearful, and I never got worried about the messages coming through, because I knew that they wouldn't have put me there in that theater going out on stage in front of those people if that's not what was supposed to be. So it was really a lesson in releasing and letting go, surrendering of everything.
Yeah, I've got to tell you, your respect for me just jumped up like several levels. People coming in with an expectation of which you don't necessarily know if you can fulfill whatever those 70. So if I'm like a magician, like basically I know what I'm going to get when I show up, right? If I'm David Copperfield, I'm like, hey, I've got magic, buy the magic. You're coming in like, hey, if I'm pull out of the fishbowl and I'm not getting whatever the thing I was expecting, basically it's a high, you're inviting a lot of other people's baggage, quite honestly, even into your life with the expectations they might have. So.
Oh yeah, it ran the gamut for sure. But it did. It taught me a lot about myself and what I was capable of. And if I can get up there and do that 90-minute show, I had 4 shows a week. And if I can get up there and do that, like, you can put me in front of anybody.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I was going to say, if you put yourself in such a situation and allow yourself to surrender to that, that's kudos to you. That's just absolutely amazing.
It was fun. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, and I see we got a comment from Stacy. That's nice. Thanks, Stacy.
Yeah.
One more comment from Aurora, who asks, what do you think about ancestral healing and connections? For example, Holocaust and Native Americans, etc.
Mm-hmm.
It's a great question. I do feel like ancestors can pass on their energy. And I've seen it within clients where usually I will see it like a generation back. So if it's or 2 generations back. So a client, if it's a mom or a dad or a grandparent, and the person has never been able to identify why they have this fear of scarcity, or why do they not feel like they can be safe when they go out in public. And I'll look at their energy and I'm like, it's not even yours. Like, that's something your grandfather didn't heal. And so then you can go back energetically and basically untangle and cut the cords between them and that healing that didn't happen with a family member. And so, yeah, I've seen it actually quite often, that it's not even their own stuff that they're trying to deal with.
Yeah. I mean, how would you, because to some degree there would be, just by the fact you were raised in a family of scarcity, right? It would be, it doesn't even necessarily need to be ancestral. When we're talking here to the Holocaust, we might be talking 2 or 3 generations back, right? So this is really with individuals we haven't had contact with.
Right. Yeah. And it's kind of a collective consciousness. And so when a group of people go through something and experience something that is traumatic on so many levels, I feel that energy spreads. And so whoever it was that went through whatever experience they went through, it affects the people around them, which then affects the families around them. So I feel like it just keeps spreading until the center of that consciousness can be healed.
Yeah.
Like hearing you speak, we had a hypnotherapist a while back ago, and the way you speak about going back and healing something, it really resonated with what she was saying. But beautiful to also.
Thank you. Yeah, I feel that everything's got a root.
Yeah.
And so if you can find the point and find the root and heal that, then it can spread. You know, I've even done sessions with clients where I will be shown that their mom was not happy about being pregnant. And so I can go into the womb with my client as they are growing and heal the energy of them, heal the energy of the mom, so that now the client who's fully grown can feel like they were wanted or they are wanted. So just finding and identifying that root is important.
Yeah. Yeah.
We have another comment from Aurora. It's funny you said grandfather, because my family went through the Holocaust in World War II. My family kept some secrets hidden for centuries.
Yeah. Grandfather energy kept coming in with that example. So I'm not surprised that that's why they were showing me a grandfather when I was talking. Secrets in any family are part of that root system. And recognizing and remembering that people can really only meet you where they're at on their own journey. And even if it's a secret or something that somebody did that you are trying to come to terms with, I think forgiveness is a huge healer even if you never knew the person or you never spent time with them, but just in your own mind and in meditation, sending them thoughts of love and forgiveness can often pull that root out.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah, there was in the new book that's coming out, since I was writing letters while you were writing letters, like one of the letters I wrote was to the woman that killed my mom, right? In the drunk driving accident, just to sort of let her know that she was loved, and that I didn't even want to use the word forgiven, because in a way forgiven would have then implied that she had actually done something wrong. And then I have to go from there. So I actually wanted to create the space to say, you actually, it was all just as it was meant to be.
Ooh, chills. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Beautiful, Andy.
Yeah, it's in some ways we don't look at the world in compassion, and then when we don't look at it in compassion, then we reflect back the things that we want to project as evil and bad. And I did it for years because, as I mentioned, my dad being who he was, and it took me years to see that he loved me so much that he actually behaved like a tyrant. So there was I was lucky enough to have gotten to tell him that I could see him. We've got, I believe, only about 4 more minutes with you till we come up on the.
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely staying open to what the universe presents. I feel like the more I swim with the current rather than fight against it, the bigger the opportunities will come. I'm excited for what the future is bringing, and I hope that anybody that's watching this today feels like differently or encouraged to change their perception of what they are seeing in the world around them or what they're feeling in themselves. And a breakdown is your pathway to a breakthrough. And so no matter what you're feeling today, it's not going to be that way forever. And I just encourage you to put one foot in front of them. Yeah. We don't necessarily know what tomorrow is going to bring, but that's part of the mystery and the magic of being alive. And so just do your best to stay present, meditate, go outside, be around people that you love, be around people that challenge you, because those are the people that are going to wake you up the most.
Yeah.
When you said that, I was thinking, a lot of people in parts of the world can't go out.
Yeah.
Yet. It's coming. But even if you can stand on a balcony or stand by a window and just feel yourself in the presence of being outside, one of the quickest things you can do to be a part of nature is to imagine that you have tree roots going out of the bottoms of your feet and just penetrate them down into the earth as far as you can get them. And you can do that from a 10-story building. You don't have to be outside, but it's that act and the intention of bringing yourself with and to the earth that will help you to feel more connected and alive.
Yeah, I feel, even just because of my empathetic state, just hearing you say it, I already just felt myself go to a very grounded space just now.
It's like whatever block someone might have when I hear you speak, it feels like in your body, like there's no limitation, almost.
I feel like I've got to be somewhat of an example of what's possible, because I do feel like my life chose me in what I'm doing. Although part of that is also a soul contract I agreed to uphold, right? But yeah, hopefully I can reach more people in the coming year and get in front of more groups and see where it takes me. Hopefully as a conduit for motivation and inspiration.
Wow,
wonderful. I'd like to have her back. I'd like to have you back.
You can have me back. We'll do this again, and I'll fix my ponytail next time.
I think we should do. I saw you fiddling with the cards. I thought it would be fun to actually have that be part of our thing. I didn't know if we were going to get to it, but I thought if Bambo saw it, for sure he was going to say, "Please pick one for Andy."
Yeah, we can pick a couple of quick cards, and then we can post them probably afterwards if your video is going to run out. But next time, you can always have viewers tune in, and I can pick a card for people that tune in.
Oh wow.
That'd be fun.
That would be fun. Yeah.
So Andy, you got peace. And that's so funny because right before we came on, your card that I pulled for you was peace.
Wow.
And it's Archangel Shamuel. And it says, peace comes from remembering that only love is real.
Wow.
And so that's a good card for you. I'm not going to leave you out. Do you go by Bam or Bambos?
Bambos.
I think I'm the only one that's ever called him that on the show. I never even called him that before we started. I just thought it was nice.
Oh, your card is all as well. It's Archangel Jeremiel. Everything is happening exactly as it's supposed to. With hidden blessings, you will soon understand.
Wow.
Yeah,
Yeah.
trusting the process.
Yeah, we're very suitable.
Exactly.
very
And getting that
suitable for where we
documentary
both are
made.
right now. It's very suitable for where we both are right now.
Yeah.
Yes. So thank you very much for joining. It was
Thank
great being
you.
with
Yeah.
Sending you a big
Yeah,
hug.
we send you a virtual
Yay,
hug.
big
Yeah.
hug.
Bug free.
But till next time, yeah.
Until next time, we'll do it again soon.
I hope so.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.